and they clear through the stacks of manuscripts. But what this means to you, the writer, is it's going to take them a long time to get to yours. When I was freelancing for Bain Books, I was reading manuscript submissions for them, and they brought me in the first day I was there, and I said, hey, you guys got a nice office, you know, high ceilings, you got windows. They said, yeah, okay, stop looking, because you're coming to the basement with us to the mailroom. And I walked into the mailroom, and there's a guy sitting at a desk with the day's business-sized envelopes, probably 20 or 30 of them, sorting them to figure out where they go. And the manuscripts, which are in much bigger, 9 by 12 by 4-inch envelopes, on bookshelves, all the way back, all the way around. Yeah, it's taken us a while. We actually haven't gotten to them for 6 or 9 months, so you're going to have to start clearing them out, they said to me. Yeah, okay, so 6 or 9 months of, and mind you, this is a book publisher getting 200 or 300 manuscripts a week also. I thought it was only in short fiction. They do it in long fiction, too. And they publish a mix of 50% science fiction, 50% fantasy. So I was surprised when I started reading them to realize they publish 50% science fiction, but they get 10% science fiction. 90% of what they get is high fantasy. And the vast majority of these manuscripts, they don't start with chapter 1, scene 1. They don't even start with a prologue or a preface or a foreword. The vast majority of high fantasy manuscripts that come into a publisher start with a really badly hand-drawn map. Yeah. I don't know why either. I know why. They open every book they see, and half of them have maps in them. They're very nicely drawn, usually by a cartographer or an artist. Because the publisher pays somebody to do that after they bought the book. Don't draw the map. If you've got to draw the map to keep the world straight in your own mind, that's cool. Don't send it. And if you need to do character sketches just to figure out what the characters look like and keep that straight in your mind, that's great. You know, any note you need when you're writing something is cool. Don't send the publisher those character sketches. It's really bad art, and it just freaks us out. Going back to sending the right thing to the right publication and not sending the pictures, working at Analog. Analog is the last bastion of hard science fiction. And Analog publishes science fiction. And it's been doing it forever. It does a pretty good job of it. And it's pretty clear what they're publishing and what they're not publishing. Anybody who's read the magazine for more than, an issue, knows they don't actually publish Star Trek stories in Analog. Anybody who knows anything about Star Trek knows nobody publishes Star Trek stories except Paramount Books. Anybody who knows anything about Star Trek knows this is because Pocket Books, Paramount production company. Because Paramount holds the license to Star Trek like this, and if you publish something and you didn't get approval, they're going to, eviscerate you. That's how they keep their property running. It's cool. They own it. Okay. I got one day at the magazine a 3-page handwritten query letter. Mind you, don't send query letters for short fiction unless they actually ask for it, because how much time am I going to spend reading your letter telling me about the story, which also, incidentally, is something to know about the cover letter. You don't have to tell me the story in the cover letter if you only actually read the manuscript. Because again, I'm not buying the cover letter. I might reject the cover letter, not buying it. I had a 3-page query letter saying, "Dear editor, I've come up with this brilliant idea. It's Star Trek. But it's Star Trek like you haven't read it before. It's got sex in it." And he drew little pictures for me. Yeah, I needed a little Brillo for the eyes after that. But this was an author who knew his own limits. He said, even if they're not great, anything with the word Star Trek on it is going to sell. And then he did the math by hand. If we publish 20 books at $20 a piece in hardcover, they're going to sell 1 million copies a piece. That's $20 million per book, and we'll split them. He worked out all the math for me. Yeah, it was wonderful. And remember I said this was a handwritten cover letter. Now, query letter. Now, we don't like handwritten stuff. And back before there were computers, back when it was just typewriters, well, you could tell the whack jobs because it was handwritten in crayon, marker. They don't let me have sharp things in the home, so I'm sending it. Yeah, well, Mr. Handwritten Query Letter with the 20 volumes of Star Trek in hardcover with sex in them because they're going to sell even if it's crap because it says Star Trek on the cover, caught me on a good day. This was a time when the editor of the Star Trek books was a good friend of mine. He's since moved on to something else. So I wrote back to Mr. Three Pages handwritten query letter, I want to sell you Star Trek, and I said, okay, it sounds like a nifty idea, but Paramount holds the license really, really tight. You have to send it to Pocket Books, and the editor's name is John Ordover. Send it to him. Oh, and the good part. The good part was, by the way, send me a $5,000 advance so I can afford to have this thing typed up, because it's all handwritten in composition books. We know you're poor, don't tell us that. Yeah, go to the library, type there. How am I doing on time? Just because...
Yeah, 20 minutes.
Is that all?
Give us a
All
time
right.
for questions.
Well, I'll take questions anyway. Why, other questions? Go ahead.
How many places should you submit a story to at the same time?
Thank you. Oh, I don't even know this woman. I didn't plant the question. I know you're just a little spaced right now, but I didn't plant that. The question was, how many places should you submit a story to at the same time? The answer is, if you don't want to get published, all of them. The answer, if you do want to get published, is one of them. Many of the publications writers' guidelines that you will read say no simultaneous submissions. What this means is, do not submit the story simultaneously to more than one place. Or in simpler terms, send it to only one magazine. And when you hear back from the magazine, you can send it somewhere else. Why do we say this? It takes us a long time to read the manuscripts. The magazines take 1, 2, 5, 12 months. Book publishers can take years. Why do we say no simultaneous submissions? We're just slowing down your career. That's evil of us, isn't it? No. You're supposed to be writing the next story while we are reading this one. Why we say this is because the magazine business is really screwy and weird. Those monthly magazines that I worked for, when you see a magazine on the newsstand, it's strange, right? This is what, July 3rd. If you go to the newsstand now, most of the monthly magazines you see are going to be dated August and possibly September. And the weekly magazines you see are all going to have dates of July 10th, 12th, and 14th. We do this because people who run newsstands are even dumber than well, no, I'm sorry. They're not dumb, they're businessmen. And like all businessmen, they want to have the newest, best whatever so that their customers will buy it. If they have magazines with today's date, well, gosh, tomorrow it's going to be expired and nobody's going to want to buy it. So, newsstands and bookstores and magazine distributors force publishers to put the date sometime in the future on today's magazine. Well, okay, we deal with that. So, in July, you're getting the August and September issues of the magazines. But it takes a while to put the magazine together. When I was working at those monthly magazines, we were working on 6 issues at any one time. Of each magazine, there's the final stage, which is just about to go out to the sellers, and there's a stage just before that when we're proving it before we say to the printer, okay, go ahead and print up 20,000 copies of this magazine, so, you know, and on and on and on. So I'm working on 6 magazines at a time for each title, 12 magazines. It takes a long time, but what that means to you, the writer, is that right now in the month of July, Analog and Asimov's have already decided what's going in the December and January issues. And they have a schedule to keep because they got to do this every month like clockwork. And, well, you know, reading stories is way down the list on, okay, we'll get to it eventually. But when they find one that they actually want to publish, suddenly there's no time left at all. And frequently, they will put that story into production even before the author knows that the story is getting bought. They will proofread it, they will copy edit it, they will line edit it, they will send it off. Back when we had our own typesetter, send it to the typesetter. These days, they actually tend to ask for an electronic copy. Ooh, sidebar there. Some magazines do now take electronic submissions. I talk about them less frequently because I don't understand how people can survive doing that, but some do. And they will say, email us your story, we don't want the paper. It's cool, if that's what they're asking for, do it. But they are going to ask you, and the people who take it on paper are going to ask you to go to that standard manuscript format. Even those who take electronic submissions, they want a lot of white space so that they don't go blind reading it. We knew who the amateurs were when computers first came out because they would send us typeset manuscripts. And it's especially noticeable working at Analog, which has a 2-column format. Every page has 2 columns of text. Because we would get manuscripts that are in 2-column format, tiny type. They've already typeset it for us. All we have to do is photocopy it and put it in the magazine, except we can't read that.